What's up, everybody? Welcome into a new edition of the Bearcast on Sikkim 365 Radio. I am Craig Smoke, Sikkim365.com team reporter, also Sikkim 365 radio host, which, of course, you can catch each weekday, Monday through Friday, from 3 until 6 on the Sikkim 365 app and Sikkim365.com. And I'm joined, as always, by Grayson Grundhafer, Director of Broadcasting, also team and recruiting reporter for Sikkim 365. And Grayson, another week, a lot of new news. And how you doing, man?
Doing good. Just coming off of the weekend, of course, a little long weekend with Memorial Day. So that was really nice. Got to see a little bit of family. So I got to say it was a good time, and it's been a good week. And obviously for me, I cover recruiting pretty extensively, and today is the end of the dead period. So I really couldn't be happier. I have no complaints, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's been a long weekend. Hopefully everybody was able to celebrate Memorial Day weekend in good fashion. Remember why we had a little extra time, of course, as well. But, yeah, hopefully everybody had fun, was able to maybe be around family a little bit more than they were this time last year, and friends and things like that as we start to make progress, if you will. But, yeah, as things have opened up, it has also opened up a lot of new news in recruiting, and there's been, plenty of headlines that we're going to get to. But, of course, I want to say thank you and hello to Armstrong Sims as well, as he produces this show. Good to have Armstrong with us as always. Thanks to our sponsors as well, USMD Health System, Medical Management. Thanks for them being along for the ride as well. But let's start off. Grayson could go a lot of different directions here, and I know it's normal that we start with football, but there's a decision that's been out there kind of brooming and looming, and we've been waiting on this. It was fun to have Mark Vital in studio last week from his journey to Baylor to where he is now preparing for the NBA draft. We've known his decision for a while. We've known about Maceo Teague, but Davion Mitchell. But one guy we haven't known about, Grayson, was Jared Butler. And this past weekend, Jared Butler with a pretty lengthy message on social media announcing that he is, in fact, going to enter the NBA draft. He thanked Baylor and, the whole spiel on his way out. And, man, one of the best to ever put on the green and gold. I think that is more than fair to say, a national champion. And, now we'll see what his NBA future holds. But that still leaves a Matthew Meyer decision to come at some point before we really know what this roster is going to look like next year. But this was one we were waiting on. Jared Butler is officially headed to the NBA. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so he's going to be probably a first-round pick. That's at least what most people have him predicted as. And it's really interesting that he took it all the way down to the last day to make this decision. I think it's just, I'm going to guess that it was a pretty tough decision for him, or else I don't know why you wait this long. But again, really happy for him. You mentioned one of the greatest ever to put the green and gold on. And I would say, if you go through Baylor history, you look at what he's done at Baylor, his accolades, the things he's achieved, from all Big 12, first team All-American type things, winning a national championship for a program that's never won one, hadn't been to the Final Four in 70 years. He was a huge reason in them getting there. And really, to me, his freshman year was kind of that turning point for Baylor. Once Tristan Clark went down, he became the guy, him and Mackay Mason, of course. And it just seemed like everything at Baylor changed from a basketball perspective. Of course, you add in Davion Mitchell, Maceo Teague, the guys after that came the next year, that added to it. But, I'd be hard-pressed to find another Baylor athlete that achieved more in their time at Baylor than Jared Butler. Really impressive career. I couldn't be happier. It's sad to see him go, but on the flip side, this is what you want. If you want to be an elite program, you got to send guys to the next level, to the pro level, and that's exactly what Baylor's doing with Jared Butler and, of course, with Davion Mitchell, who's going to be a lottery pick. So really happy for Jared, one of my favorite Baylor athletes of all time, one of the best ones to cover, and I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he has an awesome NBA career, and I think he has the talent to do just that.
Yeah, no doubt he has the talent. I think the big question has been, just health-wise, where was he? The medical's clear. was all that good to go? I mean, I think that was really kind of the question mark of, what was preventing him. And, obviously there were questions from his time at Alabama that brought him to Baylor to begin with. But hopefully this means, that everything's checked out in that regard. Hopefully this means that he can just move forward with the process in a nice, clean manner. And, if that's the case, then Jared Butler should be a first-round pick. And it'll be awesome to see, another Baylor Bear joining the NBA fold and joining the likes of, the newest addition, Freddie Gillespie, not that long ago. But hopefully it's, 3 or 4 new guys that'll be joining. So in your mind, a surefire first-round pick, have you checked out many mocks? I have not, since he declared, what was that, Sunday night, or not Sunday nights, but was it Sunday that he declared, or was it yesterday?
I think it was yesterday, wasn't it?
Okay, well, the long weekend's
Sunday. It was Sunday. Yeah, it was Sunday.
Yeah, the long weekend's got my mind kind of messed up on which day is which, quite frankly. But, so he makes it official, and I have not checked out any mock drafts. Have you by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few different scenarios. I've seen the Warriors in the first round, the Lakers in the first round, but by all accounts, he's probably going to be a first-round pick unless he, goes to the NBA Combine and just tests horribly, or they – find something they don't like, something along those lines. But just based on his talent level, yeah, he's pretty a sure thing as a first-round pick, probably in the 20s is what I would guess.
Well, good luck to Jared Butler, the national champ, and again, one of the best to ever put on the green and gold in any sport. So it's official for him. He did have until July 19th, like midnight deadline, but he goes ahead and makes the call with a couple of weeks left. So long list of early entrants that he'll be joining, the likes of the Cade Cunninghams, of course, his teammate Davion Mitchell, amongst, many others. So NBA draft mode, get ready for it, because Baylor is going to have some big involvement. That is to be sure. So basketball-wise, we now await Matthew Meyer's decision and kind of go from there. But until then, everything's kind of, I guess, status quo. And then you sort of have a better idea now of where they stand. We'll know for sure once Meyer makes his decision. Speaking of decisions, on the football front, Grayson, you mentioned the dead period. How long are we going on the dead period until its final expiration now? What was that, 16 months, 12 months? What was the actual dead period tally?
Yeah, it was just over 15 months. I think it was like 15 and maybe 2 weeks. So, yeah, a little over 15. I mean, it was a crazy time period, a really long time period. And now, I mean, you're seeing all over Twitter how excited kids are to go out and be able to go visit schools and be able to just see campuses in person and get to meet coaches. I mean, that's another big part of it. A lot of these recruits did not get that opportunity to go out and really create a relationship with coaches on the recruiting trail. And for a lot of schools, that's the key way they land prospects is through building relationships. And it's hard to do that when you can't do it face-to-face. So really excited for this. I think this is going to be an awesome month of June. I mean, matter of fact, Baylor's case, I guess, and so, this affects me. It is literally every weekend, every Saturday in the month of June, or the next 3 are camps, and then the last 2 is an official visit. So, I mean, it's going to be a jam-packed month of June, and I'm excited for it. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get to see a whole lot of prospects who I don't think would necessarily have gotten offers if they were recruits in 2021, but now they get to go to camps and experience that, and coaches get to see official testing times and heights and weights, and I think it's going to keep a lot of kids out of JUCO and keep a lot of kids out of lower levels of football, because coaches are going to get to see them and get to see their fit and get to know them, and that's just a huge part of the process that was missed in the 2021 recruiting class.
So I will say, before we get to recruiting news as it affects Baylor, I asked you this question before we went on the air. I don't know if this is a new trend or if this is something that's been going on, and maybe I just now have noticed it because of the fact that, we haven't talked about camps in forever, but man, I noticed quite a few prospects throwing out camps like they were top 10 lists and, showing everybody where they were going to be. And I know part of that's the excitement of just having this opportunity. And I was thinking, there was an entire class who's probably really annoyed by seeing camp dates and things because they missed out on every aspect of that last year. That's a unique class that just had a whole recruiting cycle wiped out. And so now you have this restarting and this, next wave of guys that get to re-experience this now. But there was like that lost class almost of recruiting where they didn't get the opportunities that everybody else did. So it's kind of weird. But yeah, the camp top 10s or the camp calendars and all of that, you said it's not new, but maybe I'm just noticing it again because of the fact that, like I said, it's sort of restarting.
Yeah, it's definitely not something that's new. It's something that these kids love to post about and love to get out there. And I got to say, I won't complain because it helps me also be able to know who's coming to these camps in advance from the kids that I don't get to talk to or the kids that, don't really have that Baylor interest quite yet, but are kind of on the radar, if that makes sense. And so helps me out a lot. I think a bigger part of it, though, and the amount of visits some of these kids are taking are because of exactly what you said. I mean, you're seeing lists that are, 8 schools deep that are visits, and you're seeing kids go out of state. You're seeing kids go to various parts of the country to try to go visit these schools. I know I talked to one kid, Ashton Cozart. He's out of the Fort Worth area. He's a wide receiver in the 2023 class, and he's in Florida right now. He's in SEC country. He might go visit Alabama. He might go to Miami, at Florida this weekend, and then he'll come back to Texas, and he's going to visit TCU and some various other places. But he's starting his visits out of the state and trying to get to go out and see these schools that have been recruiting him so hard that he hasn't gotten to meet and get to go on campus. And I think that's a big thing. And I will say, I'm not going to say Baylor's missing out on an opportunity by not having a bunch of visits immediately. But I will say there's a chance that it could favor those teams, the ones that get the very first visit. I would like to see how that kind of plays out and see if that impacts things at all.
So in the meantime, while camps are starting back up, players have arrived on campus this past weekend. You may have seen some videos from Baylor Football showing the guys from the past class now arriving and showing up on campus to move in, and see the parents with them moving boxes and things like that. And Grayson, I know you had a chat as well on the signees, but anything stand out to you from the class arriving this past weekend?
No, I mean, just the chance to get to see a lot of these various prospects get on campus and get the opportunity to see them officially arrive. I think that is one of the cooler things that you get to see throughout this whole process. You get to see it with the early enrollees, and then you get to see kind of a bigger wave because you're seeing walk-ons. You're seeing guys who, from the portal, like a Jacob Gall, get on campus. You're also seeing, obviously, the rest of the class, which there's quite a few of, get on campus as well. And I got to say, this is one of those really exciting times, and nothing really stood out as far as, oh man, this guy looks huge or whatnot, because I've kept in touch with a lot of these guys. So I think everyone was excited to see Tate Williams, and I've been cautioning people, Tate is right around 270 pounds, which is great. That's what they want him at. And he's going to come in and be able to put on that weight actually starting today, because I believe the workout program begins today. And so that's going to be the real opportunity for him to put on the weight. But it's the same thing with Ryan Lingyell. It's going to take time. These guys need to put on good weight. The staff didn't want them to come in and be, this big 300-pounder that is just not athletic and not the guy that they recruited. They wanted them to still be that guy and then come in and put on that functional strength that can allow them to achieve big things in their career. And that's why I also say, kind of pump the brakes on trying to get guys out there as true freshmen, especially on the offensive line. It's just very, very difficult if you're not one of the surefire SEC guys, like going to an Alabama or something along those lines. So nothing really stood out weight-wise, but I will say it was great to see all these kids with big smiles on their faces. That's for sure.
Yeah, nice group of guys that have landed on campus to now start to get ready for and get excited about and get frustrated with. And, the whole process of these guys as they move through their 4 to 5 years or whatever the case may be. And if you're really lucky, it'll be 3 years or so because somebody has stood out in a major way. So in more football news, as players have now arrived on campus, also Grayson, subtraction to the recruiting class. Cedric Roberts announced that he is going to be decommitting from Baylor. I think this is going to probably become something that is quite common. Guys now having the floodgates reopened after having a shutdown for the last year. I don't think decommits are going to be really a major surprise, but Baylor suffers one this past weekend with Cedric Roberts. So tell us what you know there and your thoughts on what that means for this class.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have tons of thoughts on this, and most of them are pretty negative. This was a guy who they found early, were able to extend an offer to, and were able to land. And I know he came up for the spring game, really loved what he saw, loves Baylor. Really seemed like a guy who was not going to sway at all, even though Texas was contacting him. Various other schools were contacting him as well. But seemed like Baylor was the place and told me that everyone else was too late, especially referring to Texas. But at the end of the day, you want kids to make the decision that is right for them. Because in today's day and age, if a kid goes to the wrong school, they're just going to end up in the transfer portal. And so I think this was a good move for him because it allows him to go out and examine all of his options and make the right decision. Is Baylor out? No. Is it one of the more likely things for a guy to decommit and then commit again? It doesn't happen that often, but it can happen, especially in a situation where a guy committed really early because it was his first big offer. But it does make things a little more complicated. I know Baylor is still inside his top group of schools. He's still planning on taking his official visit on June 25th, which is great news. He lives in Pflugerville, so, a short hour drive to Waco, which is great as well. He'll get the opportunity to get in to Waco, probably come see a game, and continue to try to build that relationship with the staff now that the dead period's over. So I'm not going to say that it's over for him, but I will say that it does add a new wrinkle to his recruitment, and it's going to be very interesting to see how many offers he piles up. He was a kid that I was really excited about when he committed. We talked a little bit about him, 6'4", 275 pounds, and a guy who is still very raw and still learning the game and still really trying to put himself in a position where he could get better and better. The ceiling is there for him, and so this is a tough loss, no doubt, for this class. And I think if you look at the depth chart for Baylor and the roster, there are a couple areas where they just really have to hit in this class. They have to figure out a way to land prospects that can really become good players for them. And defensive line is one of those positions where they need more depth. They need guys who have his kind of height and frame to fit Dave Aranda's scheme, and he was a perfect fit for that. And so, yeah, it's a big miss. It's a big loss. Baylor's going to have to go back out and start evaluating talent, and hopefully with camps they're able to find some guys who fit what they're trying to do, and then hopefully they're able to maybe come back around and re-recruit Cedric Roberts and get him back in this class, because I think he was a pretty valuable part of this 2022 recruiting class.
Yeah, so he now is going to go, tour the country or tour the state or do whatever, other recruits are going to do. Not say that I can't say that I'm entirely surprised. Sometimes you just watch guys kind of on Twitter and I don't know about you, but sometimes I just see guys say certain things and I get kind of vibes of, seems like he may be interested in looking around or maybe fishing for, something else. And Cedric Roberts for a long time seemed like super committed, but there's just a couple times I saw him tweet maybe in the last couple months. I was just like, I wonder, if somebody came along or whatever. So I can't say that I was just totally surprised, with his decision, but still not great news for Baylor football and at a position of need. So like you said, it's back to the drawing board for them. And I'm sure we'll answer plenty of football questions as we get into the mailbag this week. But anything else to touch on football-wise? We got the freshman class and the transfers are moving in this past weekend. Dead period's over now for the first time in nearly 16 months. Cedric Roberts decommits. Is there anything that I'm not thinking about here?
No, those are definitely the big headlines, and I mean it's going to be really interesting as this month of June happens. I think we're going to see a lot of movement from players, like you mentioned, with this kind of opportunity to go visit schools and go get to know more coaching staffs and get to go see exactly what, go see schools and go see exactly what you're committing to. I just think a lot of things could change in the month of June, and with camps and then of course, official visits, a lot can also change for Baylor. And so I'm very interested. It's obviously not the best start to the month by losing a guy like Cedric Roberts in your class, but there's plenty of room for growth in this class. There's plenty of room for evaluations and landing talent on official visits. And really, this is a big thing for the Baylor staff. They have got to find ways to get their key talent, the key priority targets, get them on campus for that official visit. I know a lot of guys are already locked in, but there are still some guys out there who Baylor's still trying to battle with other schools just to get kids on campus as one of the 5 official visits. So, like I said, the month of June is going to be pretty hectic. And as far as football goes, like I said, I think summer workouts are starting today. So an opportunity to get into the gym and try to build guys as fall approaches. And I'm really excited to see how that process takes shape and how these, especially the offensive line, grows, and to see what kind of gains can be made and see if these young guys can start pushing the older guys even more than they already have.
Yeah, so exciting times, and obviously a big summer for Dave Aranda and this football coaching staff, just this football program. Last year, a disappointment. Last year, a lot of, wild cards thrown their way. Things have sort of settled into a nice routine, it seems like, and really it's a matter of, do they have the talent? And if they do, then they should be okay. And it seems like they have the coaching, but we will see all of those things, obviously. But the journey has begun for 2021 and that season and the 2022 classes and so on and so forth. So good stuff there, and exciting as ever. One thing that was not exciting this past weekend, man, the last couple of weekends really have sort of been brutal to Baylor Athletics, quite frankly. I mean, just big games and a lot of losses kind of piling up. Tennis falls just short, which was unfortunate. You had Adrian Boitan in, individual play, can't finish. He played for like 2 weeks straight and just could not quite complete it. And, moving on, softball season comes to an end. And then there was baseball. And you just figured a month ago baseball is going to be playing in the postseason. That looked like it was set up quite nicely for them. Looked like it was pretty matter of fact that they would be in the postseason. And somehow over like the last 3 weeks, Grayson, they've found a way to completely tumble to the point of going from like sure thing in the tournament, having a spot, to, all of a sudden being a bubble team, to they're out. They're not in the postseason. And that's it. That's the end of the season for Steve Rodriguez and company. They go 0-2 at the Big 12 tournament. They get outscored 20-8 in losses to Texas Tech and then subsequently to Kansas State to get eliminated this past Thursday. And so they don't even do what they needed to do on their end just to have a chance, which was, hey, win a game or two. So then they leave it entirely into other teams' hands, which is not a good position to be in. And, well, that dooms them. So Baylor Baseball, it's over for 2021. And the end of careers for guys like Andy Thomas and others. Your thoughts on the disappointing end and the no tournament bid for Baylor Baseball?
Yeah, I mean, it stinks to see, doesn't it? This was a team that was really, it seemed like they were destined for postseason. They had a nice run in there, but when you close 2-6 on the season, that's definitely a red flag. When on the year you're 8-14 on the road or on a neutral surface, they are 8-14. Like I said, I mean, that's just not getting the job done enough. when you're away from home. Obviously, 23-6 at home was very helpful, but at the end of the day, they needed a few more wins. The Big 12 tournament showing really disappointing, because I think if you look at kind of the selection show and where they finished, they were right there. I think to a lot of people, they might have been the last team out. And that's really, really tough tough pill to swallow when all you really had to do was beat Kansas State, it seems, or beat Texas Tech, which obviously was a much tougher challenge. But, beating Kansas State or winning one of those games against Oklahoma that they dropped, they're probably in, or one against Oklahoma State. So a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda. It just did not happen, and really disappointing. This was a program that I felt like should be a staple in regionals every single year. And I'll also say, and I hate to be kind of, and this might be a controversial take to an extent, but I remember a couple years ago, TCU got in, and their RPI, I believe, was like 55 that year, and they ended horribly. They really did not have a good year, but they got in. And in Baylor's case, their RPI was 44, and they didn't get in. And there were some controversial teams that got in over them. But I will say, I'm wondering, and this is the selection committee's job, and I know you're not supposed to take in previous seasons or use that as kind of a data point, but they took a team like Michigan, they took a team like TCU that year, and those schools have had postseason success before. And Baylor, on the other hand, in the regionals they've been in, they simply have not performed in the past, I guess, 6 years now. And that I feel like played a role in this decision. And again, like I said, they're not supposed to think like that, but I also think it's hard not to. In Michigan's case, they didn't play a non-conference slate, and they still got in over Baylor. And the only way really I could explain that is that they looked at what Michigan did, 3 or 4 years ago, where they were in the national championship. They might have won it, actually. I know they were there. And I just wonder if that played a role in this decision at all.
Yeah, well, whatever weighed in, whatever was weighted, whatever was decided, it did not end in Baylor's favor. So baseball comes to an end. And, I'd be curious to kind of know sort of what went into the decision. But you almost got the feeling over the last week that they were starting to feel less and less confident about, having a spot. And that's when my whole kind of tune change was just sort of hearing those guys and how uncertain they were. And, they had reason to be uncertain because that showing in the Big 12 tournament, not what was needed. And as a result, they start to work on next year. And I know we'll have a question about the roster next year and what that might look like in the mailbag. But anything else, Grayson, before we get into the mailbag for this week?
I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered all the big topics of the week. It was a pretty busy weekend. For sure, and a busy week as well.
Yeah, so Jared Butler to the NBA, Cedric Roberts decommits, no longer a member of Baylor's recruiting class. Baseball season is over. We await Matthew Meyer's decision. Football players moving on to campus and getting workouts started. So, yeah, pretty active stuff. All right, I know we had a couple of questions from last week's mailbag that we did not have time for, but we will have time definitely this week. Do you happen to have those in front of you by any chance, Grayson?
Yeah, I do. I think we only missed 2 from last week. So I'll start with the first one from Bear Love 89. Most offensive efficiency ratings had Baylor 8 or 9 in the Big 12 last year. Can we get to 5 or higher this season?
Ooh, 5 or higher. That's a pretty big jump. I don't know if I like them jumping up 4 spots because I don't know if there's enough teams in front of them that are going to take a step back. And I don't know if what Baylor's going to do jump-wise will be so impressive as to not only catch up, but then also be better than some of those teams. So I think they can flirt with top 5, but I would not anticipate a jump larger than that, no.
Yeah, I'm kind of right on the fringe. So I think there's 3 teams that will for sure be in the top 5 offensive efficiency wise in the Big 12, and that's Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State. I think those are the 3 locks. What Gundy's done, his track record, I think they'll be in the top 5 offensively. I feel like that's fairly safe to say. But then the next spots, in my opinion, are going to be between Texas, TCU, and Baylor. And I have a feeling Baylor will be there. I think they'll be the 5th team. If I had to put money on it, I'd probably have Texas at 4, Baylor at 5, with TCU just on the outside at 6 from an offensive standpoint. So, yeah, I think Baylor can do it. That's quite a big jump, and I think if they're able to get there, then they're going to have a great shot at having a very good season. I mean, if they're top 5 offensive efficiency-wise, I think this team could easily go 9-3. Or 8-4, at least flirt with a bunch more wins. So yeah, that'd be a huge goal for sure. So thanks for that question, Bear Love. Yankee Bear, he's got 3 questions. Stack rank the top 5 positions of priority for bringing in additional talent to the football team.
So offensive line 1. And then pick whatever you want after that. I mean, it's offensive line, it's defensive. We talk about it every week. It's offensive line, it's defensive line. It's then what probably secondary. And, outside of that, not really a whole lot of need, quite frankly. I mean, you don't need more receivers or tight ends or running backs or quarterbacks. You don't need more linebackers, really, but you do need pretty much everything else on defense. So, that's kind of what I view it as. How about you?
Yeah, I tried to narrow it a little bit by I put offensive tackle as the number 1 area, and then offensive guard. So again, offensive line needs to be addressed, as we've talked about. And then I put a big defensive lineman, kind of another TJ Franklin, because they just need more depth there. They don't have a bunch of guys like Gabe Hall and TJ Franklin at the end position, or at least they're not developed to that quite yet. So if they could have another guy like that, I think that would be a big addition, kind of like a Cedric Roberts, frankly. And then safety, especially high safety, someone that can come in and provide depth. And I know we're going to see more of those guys, like a Devin Neal type this next season, which will be very encouraging to see. But they need more of that. They need to continue to grow that position. And then finally, a pass rusher. I do believe TJ Franklin can be a very reliable pass rusher. I think Gabe Hall has the ability to be that as well. But if you look up and down the roster, even the jack position, there's not a lot of proven pass rushers. I think Garmin Randolph can probably be that. But I also think they could use a proven one. So maybe a Jackie Marshall, now that he's on campus, could also provide that. I'm not sure if it'll be his freshman year or next year, but I do think pass rusher could be another one. So thanks for that question, Yankee Bear. The next one, with Grimes and Mateos coming to Baylor, which team would you say gained an advantage in the Baylor-BYU game as a result?
Well, I would definitely say Baylor. I don't even think that's a question. I don't know how, unless BYU feels like they're just going to have better coaching, there's no way they gain anything from those guys leaving. So unless you have some idea in your head, or others do, that the coaches that are replacing Grimes and Mateos are just far superior coaches, there's no way Baylor didn't gain an advantage for the game this year. I think that's very much in their favor, but I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, they're the only side that gained an advantage here because they get to get an inside script to what BYU did, when they played. So there's only one side that gained an advantage here. I know BYU fans are really excited about Aaron Roderick, who called a lot of their passing plays last year and whatever, but they don't have Zach Wilson anymore. So they're going to have to focus on replacing that, whereas Baylor is just adding 2 very good coaches, 2 guys who obviously know what BYU did last year. So yeah, you're exactly right. There's only one side here that gained an advantage for that matchup. Now, it doesn't mean Baylor's going to, beat BYU or run them off field, but I think, if anything, Grimes and Mateos will help them at least close that gap potentially for this season. The last question from Yankee Bear, which Big 12 defenses will have the biggest challenges with Baylor's new offensive scheme, assuming that Baylor is fully installed?
I would love to give you a great answer. I have no idea. I don't know what the Baylor offense looks like. So, I know we have an idea, violence and running the football and and all of that. But off the top of my head, I don't have a great answer for you. I don't feel all the way embedded into like full scouting mode for defenses next year in the Big 12. So, maybe in a month from now, I'll be a lot more locked in. Grayson, I know you stay pretty locked in. So maybe you have a better thought on this specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a question of, who's going to have the biggest challenge, because at the end of the day, so I guess I'll just put it this way. Iowa State, TCU, West Virginia, I'm very confident in their defenses against any offense in the country. So it really doesn't, I don't know that Baylor's new offense really moves the needle to where they're going to be putting up, 50 points on those teams. I just don't know if I see that, especially because it's going to be hard for Baylor to really run everything Grimes wants when their offensive line is still not where it needs to be. But as far as schools that are going to have a problem with it, well, I mean, the easy answers are Texas Tech, Kansas. They're going to have issues because they're just not very talented on the defensive side. I do think Baylor will be able to score on Oklahoma. I think the running game that Grimes is bringing in with the wide zone, I think that could help them a little bit. They struggled against Oklahoma a few times as far as scoring points on them, even though Oklahoma really hasn't had dominant defenses all of those years. So I find that to be interesting. Texas is an interesting one because really they haven't put up a bunch of points on Texas consistently. And so I'm curious if this wide zone helps them a little bit with that. I think it will, personally. And then, of course, Kansas State, a team that they've had some success running the football on. I think they'll be able to continue that under Jeff Grimes and Mateo. So I'll go with those as kind of the schools that I'm looking at that Baylor should have quite a bit of success against.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to predict any kind of offensive success, man. I mean, yeah. I am. I just, it sounds fun. It sounds cute. Like, dude, your answers are great. I'm not, I mean that, but it's like, I don't know what Texas defense looks like. And I don't know what Baylor's offense looks like, but I know it's a guessing game at this point. So hopefully that answers your question as best as it can, but definitely interested to actually see, here sooner rather than later. So I think that brings us to the questions for this week. And we will start off Kenny's doc. What does the baseball roster lineup look like for next year? Thanks. And we know that Grayson, there were some guys that had come back. They got that bonus year, but Andy Thomas had it out there, I think, before they even were officially, eliminated from the postseason. I think he had his goodbye already out there. But your thoughts on Baylor baseball as they bring one season to a close and we look ahead at what next year could potentially look like?
Yeah, I mean, Jared McKenzie, Jack Pineda, bringing those two guys back, that should give you a lot of excitement about next year's team. Trey Richardson as well. They were young this year. They really were. And I know everyone looks at Andy Thomas, and obviously Andy was amazing this year. So happy for him to have this huge breakout year, 11 home runs, 60 RBIs. He was just really, really good and fun to watch. But they got to move on a little bit. And outside of him, they really did not have a lot of veteran guys. So now you're going to look at them next year, take big steps up. I expect Kyle Nevin to be a lot better next year than he was this year. Chase Wesner, I believe, is back. So that they do have some talent returning. And really it's that three-headed monster that I mentioned with McKenzie, Pineda, and Richardson that I'm really looking at and really excited to see kind of what they do in the coming seasons. I think they could be really special. Now, bullpen-wise, which I think is an area that they were really just kind of banged up this year. The fact that Will Rigney didn't get to pitch very much, that hurt them. Evan Godwin was supposed to have a really big role in this pitching rotation. I even heard that he could have been the Friday night guy, which would have been crazy as well. So if they can get those guys back healthy, I think that rotation could look pretty good. I'm trying to think. I think Tyler Thomas has one more year as well if he comes back, obviously. And if they can get him back, I mean, that's quite the rotation right there. Cam Cayley pitched a lot of innings this year, even kind of went into the Texas Tech game. I know he didn't pitch well, but he was a freshman, so I'm curious to see kind of what he does. They will lose Luke Boyd, I believe. I believe he's going to be in the MLB draft. So they lose a lot, but I think really they're going to be a much better team, probably a more well-rounded team next year from a hitting standpoint, from a maturity standpoint, and I think from a talent standpoint, especially in their pitching rotation. I think they'll take a big step up.
Thank you for the question, Kenny's Doc. Hopefully they can avoid COVID and injuries next year because those definitely came to bite them towards the end of the year, did not help matters as they, close things out. So ways to go now for baseball to return, but should be an interesting offseason, that's for sure. Stat Boy, what Baylor sport do you expect to perform the best this year besides A and T?
Ooh, so I think men's tennis should be really good next year again. I think men's basketball, women's basketball should be good. So, but the best, I mean, you're taking away A and T, which is the low hanging fruit, the really easy pick. But I'm gonna go with a little sneaky one. And this team had a weird year this year, just kind of got off to a really good start and then kind of fell off the radar a little bit, but they return a lot. I think women's golf could be really, really good next year. They return a lot of talent. And if they're able to get everyone back like I think they will, I think they could have a really serious run to the national championships next year. And so I'll go with them as kind of the sleeper pick, even though I know men's tennis is probably going to be a very popular pick as well.
Yeah, those are good choices. I'll go volleyball just for a different choice. You got a couple of your best players coming back, and you've been, top 5-ish the last couple of years and played for a title and all that. So I'll go with volleyball, but there are a few different options you can go with, which is an exciting thing and very good news for Baylor that there is optimism abound with several of the programs. Do you expect Treston Ebner to have a breakout season? I do. I do expect him to thrive in this new offense. Grayson, what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's already had breakout
Right.
years. I mean, I guess he's more had breakout moments, I guess would be the better word to describe it. But we know who Treston Ebner is. We know what he can do. So, yeah, I think in this offense, he's going to have the opportunity to get a lot of touches. I think I liked what I saw from him in the spring game. He ran in between the tackles well, and if they can keep him healthy, he's going to be a huge factor in this offense and could put up some really, really impressive numbers. We also know just how big of a factor he can be in the return game as well, which obviously adds to his value. So, yeah, I guess you could categorize this as a breakout year for him.
Well, compared to last year, he had some moments last year. You could consider it a breakout. So, yeah, I do expect it to be better than last year. Do you think Baylor may end up having a quarterback duel with Bohannon and Zeno? Lord, I hope not. I think we'll see both guys, but I hope it's not a rotating type of thing. I just don't know, outside of Ohio State's injury situation like 4 or 5 years ago now, where they kind of had to show multiple quarterbacks. That was really a result of injury, though. But rotating quarterbacks, we've kind of seen that before. Do you anticipate that next year?
The main way I could see it happening is if Jacob Zeno wins the job and then Gary has a role as far as a running threat, especially in goal line packages. You saw that in the spring game. He's just a powerful runner. And can churn out some of those short yardage gains, especially if they're having trouble running the ball up the middle and trying to score a touchdown in that way, in goal line packages. I could see that, but I don't see something that is close to, let's see, what's a good one that I could look back to? Maybe like a Chance Mock and Vince Young when they were at Texas. You remember that hit Vince Young's first year? They were playing like 50-50 almost. That's so rare nowadays in college football for it to be a true 50-50 split like that. So I don't see that happening. I think one guy's going to win the job. One guy's going to get the first opportunity. If that guy fails, then the other guy will get his opportunity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's what I plan on seeing as well. I don't think we're going to see like you get a series, you get a series, you get a series. And I don't know how that ever really works either. So no, I think we'll see mostly one guy until that guy can't go, and then it'll be the other guy until they find a guy. And hopefully they don't take long to find a guy. Joe Bear, thank you, Stat Boy. Let's assume Baylor football wins 7 games this season under that scenario and take into account recruiting skills of the current staff. Do you think Baylor lands a top 30 recruiting class for 2022?
I think they could probably get close to that. Sure. It'll probably be more like 35 for 2022. I expect 2023 to probably be the biggest haul if they do have a really good year this year because they can really sell that year. It's kind of difficult to sell that season when the signing period is in December. Your season kind of just ended. It's just kind of difficult to sell that, especially since Baylor's used up a lot of their official visits in June. It just makes things a little bit trickier. So I think they could get in that top, 30 to 35 range. For sure should be in the top 40. And then 2023, I've said it before, I could see them getting inside that top 25, maybe top 20. That's how good I'm expecting it to be, assuming all goes well on the field.
Yeah, like you said, 2022 is signed in December and February. So if you're wrapping up, still playing until the end of December, unless you just have really impressed somebody, they were either kind of leaning towards you anyways, or it's too late for your 7-8 wins to really have a major impact on a guy who's signed in weeks later. So that would be, like Grayson said, more of an impact that you get for the following classes. Thank you, Joe Bear. You also had, do you think Breece Hall takes a step back this year like Chuba Hubbard did in his last year? What is the state of Iowa State's offensive line? I don't anticipate that. That Chuba season last year was just weird. You had him and Gundy fighting before the season even started. You had the racial tension, which was, directly related to some of the tiff that was going on. And just a weird year for Oklahoma State stars, especially Chuba Hubbard. But what do you think? Does Breece Hall take a step back like Chuba did? And what is the state of the Cyclones' offensive line?
Yeah, he's not taking a step back. He's very, very good. I mean, he's just an exciting one to watch. And I think it's like you said, the culture that is built there, the fact that they have a veteran leader at quarterback in Brock Purdy, I don't see that happening. I think that team is going to be very, very solid and very formidable, just like they are every year. And who knows, if it all comes together, I seriously could see that team going 10-2, maybe 11-1. If it really all comes together, I've said it before, I think they're probably going to be 9-3, somewhere around there, 10-2 maybe. Now, as far as their offensive line goes, this is probably one of the bigger keys to their season. So just looking up some of the numbers that they have 4 seniors who are redshirt seniors who each have at least 15 games of experience. 3 of them started 12 games in 2020. So they have 3 seniors coming back from last year's squad that started pretty much all of their games. And then a 4th senior who's played in a lot of games. So there's experience there. Then they have a junior who started in 5 games a year ago. And they have a sophomore who started 11 games and a sophomore who started 7 games. So, yes, their offensive line is going to be very good. It'll probably be even better than it was last year, which I think is going to be great news for Breece Hall in the running game. I don't think they're the most talented offensive line, but I think they have a lot of experience, a whole lot of starting experience, and they were good enough to get the job done a year ago where they went 9-3, and if they would have had the proper amount of games, would have won 10 or 11 games a season ago. So, yes, they're going to be very formidable up front.
Man, that must be nice, huh?
Yeah.
Must be nice to just have guys that you don't have to worry about switching around. You don't have to worry if they're even cut out for what you're asking. God, does Baylor have, outside of like 2 guys, linemen that have started a combined 7 games? I mean, it's almost like, and Iowa State's got a sophomore who started like 11. I honestly, like, I say this totally in jest, but like, I don't know outside of Connor Galvin and Xavier Newman if Baylor has an offensive line that started 11 games. That's just nice to have, man. That's nice to have, and it's frustrating when you don't. So yeah, I think people are kind of hoping that, maybe it's a mirage that Iowa State's going to be really good this year or something, or maybe they're not going to be quite as good as people are. They're going to be really good. They're not going to be unbeatable, but they're going to be really good.
Yeah, I agree with you. I know someone asked, are they a top 7 team? I'm not sure if I buy that, but if you're going to tell me they're a borderline top 10 team, I can probably get on board with that.
Yeah, I wouldn't put them like top 5, but top 10, not out of the question.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Joe Bear. ZT Smith 423. What's your favorite time slot for a football game, and how many night games do you think we will get this year? Appreciate the podcast and all the other content you guys put out. Well, appreciate you, ZT Smith. I like the heat notwithstanding and all of that. So this will eliminate this time slot for a lot of people. But I like the 2:30 kicks. It's not too early. It's not too late. You get out of there. You get home in time to have dinner and then watch the primetime game. So I kind of like that 2:30 because it's right there in the middle of the day. You don't have to turn around from that Friday night game the night before and be up at the crack of dawn to get there for the 11 a.m. kick or whatever. What about you?
Yeah, I like the nighttime. I like the primetime games. Those are always my favorite. I think I probably have my best moments during those games as well, where it just seems like those have been the most memorable in my mind. So yeah, I'll go with the nighttime games. And I know he also asked how many of those nighttime games do we think that Baylor will get. So they already have 2 on the schedule. Texas State and Texas Southern both are kicking off at 6 p.m., which I believe that was actually announced this past week. So yeah, those 2 games are announced. I know Kansas is announced for 2:30 as well. So those are the first 3 games in their time slots. Just looking through the schedule, I kind of get the feeling that maybe at least one of the Texas or Oklahoma game will probably be at night. And I could even see maybe the BYU game being at night, but I mean, that's probably my best guess is that they'll probably get maybe 2 other ones along with the 2 that they have at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect too much more. I mean, unless they just light it up and they're really, really good and they force networks into, making some of that Oklahoma game or something like that, a primetime game. Yeah, I think they'll probably end up with, 3 or 4 when it's all said and done. But they got to win, or else they're going to be putting like 11 a.m. kickoffs and 2:30 kicks. And by 2:30, I like day games. I like having the sun shining and kind of having the full day of tailgating, just to kind of explain my choice more. But you can't really go wrong with night games, although I don't anticipate a lot for Baylor this year. Thank you, ZT. Doc Crowell, what have you heard that's given you the biggest hope for this next football season? Well, I heard they changed coaches on offense. That gave me a lot of hope. Because of what we saw last year. And it's not even for me, Grayson, what I'm hearing. It's just the fact of what they're able to do now that they weren't able to do last year. That's really honestly giving me the most hope. The fact that they've changed coaches on offense, the fact that they had spring football, the fact that they, have time together now. I think those matter a lot. But is there something that you've heard that gives you the biggest hope for next season?
Yeah, so it's really 2 things. One is what I've heard, and the other is what I've seen. So the first part, as far as what I've heard, the new coaches and their transition to Baylor and how much better it has been because they had spring football, which just did not happen last year. So that kind of combination has really, really helped this team, I think, from a mental standpoint. I think physically with Vic Valoria, that addition helped this team as well. So those new additions mixed with kind of that culture that Dave Aranda has been able to actually instill in the players and in the program now is such a big deal. And they simply did not have that last year. And you could tell. It was kind of obvious. This team was not connected a year ago. And I think you're going to see a team that's much more connected and really are playing for each other and the coaches even more this next season. Now, as far as the other part that I mentioned, what I've seen, it has everything to do with the Big 12 and the schedule. I just think the schedule is too favorable for me not to have hope about this season. This is the year. If they come out and they win, 5 games this year, they're going to be in trouble the next year because the schedule turns over and things only get more challenging, having to go to Texas, to Oklahoma, and to Iowa State. So those are kind of the 2 things that go hand in hand for me and are the biggest reasons why I do have a lot of optimism about this 2021 season.
Thank you, Doc, for the question, and thank you for being a regular mailbag contributor as always. And the schedule is a nice one this year. I mean, really, it's a very it's going to be a very transparent year, man. A lot of the obstacles from last season are no longer there. And, it's kind of back to normal. And so, yeah, Dave Aranda has got, big expectations this year for sure. They got to show a lot of progress. I mean, they need to show it. Vaughn 53, what game of the regular season and the NCAA tournament this past spring for the men do you have the fondest memories of? Well, I'll say Gonzaga. That's for me right there at the top because that won a title, and titles outweigh everything basically outside of just, personal love and joy. But yeah, those weigh heavy for me. So that one's always going to be a fond memory, especially because they didn't make people have to sweat throughout the entire thing. You kind of got to sit back and enjoy that one. But Grayson, what about you?
Yeah, so for the NCAA tournament, there's no question that it's the Gonzaga. I mean, that's winning the national championship, and the way they did it. I mean, that's really self-explanatory for me. That's just such a fond moment. One of my fondest moments in my time as, a Baylor fan and a Baylor alum. I mean, it was just amazing to see that. Now, as far as regular season goes, for me, it was the Illinois game back in the early part of the season because they played so well, and really that was the first moment. Obviously, I knew Baylor was going to be good just from the moment the season started. They have the talent. They really were a team that people were kind of sleeping on, even though they were ranked fairly high. That Illinois game really put them on the map, and I think it showed me not only are they really good, they have a real shot at winning a national championship, and they proved it on that night in front of a national audience. It was just a dominant performance from start to finish, and really, like I said, was the one that I think turned up the heat as far as how good they are, how good Davion Mitchell is, and just kind of how this team was coming together in really a special way.
Yeah, I read that as what game of the regular season or the NCAA tournament, and the NCAA tournament. So, no, I mean, that Illinois game's a good choice. There were a lot to pick from, that's for sure. That was what was fun about this year is, man, you had a lot to choose from. And I think if you just polled the big group, you'd probably have a lot of different answers from the regular season. It could be just beating your common Big 12 opponents, but doing so in emphatic fashion, or that great non-conference. So thank you, Vaughn53, for the question. This week to kind of wrap things up. And we got to all the questions this week, which is a good thing. And as we touched on, a lot going on. So football getting back into the swing of things, and the new faces have arrived. Others slumbering for the summer now, and we'll be back in the fall. But Grayson, anything before we go this week?
No, just another really exciting week, and it's camp season. Really excited to get out there and go see some high school athletes and some talent on display, and I'm sure I'll have a little bit to report on next week when we do the Bearcast.
Good deal. We'll have more on that, and we'll probably be pretty recruiting heavy moving forward because that's what's going to be going on. A lot of camps and a lot of visits and things like that. So want to thank our sponsors as always. Also want to thank Armstrong Sims as well for producing behind the scenes. And thank you to Grayson, and thank you to everybody who sent in questions, and everybody who listens to this podcast, and everybody who is members of Sikkim 365. If you're not a premium member, then check it out, especially with football season right around the corner. Or maybe think of it as a gift to someone as well. Get them interested in the fun side of Baylor Athletics. The discussion, some of it can be a little not fun sometimes, but it always turns out fun, and good deal. We've got, I think, everything covered, so we'll bring it to a close. Thanks again to our sponsors. Thanks for Grayson Grudenhafer and Armstrong Sims. I'm Craig Smoke, and this has been the Bearcast on Sikkim 365 Radio.